Hi, I'm Sarah. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about my journey to sustainable health and meaningful success. Tonight we're keeping it really low key because it's midnight and my fiance is sleeping in the other room and he's a really light sleeper. So I gotta keep it a little bit chill even though I'm feeling a little bit feisty right now because I just finished listening to What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Dr. Shad Helmstetter. And I just really need to talk about it because lots of thoughts going on. I read this book when I was in Amway. If you're new to my channel, I was in Amway for 2.5 years. It's a multi-level marketing company, a network marketing company, if you will. And it was a total scam. It was a total scheme, total cult. And I recently did a video where I kind of covered how I'm reminiscing of some of the ambition that I had, even though it was completely delusional. How I really just was going for it and I was really throwing my all into this ambition, and it was fruitless because there were so many faulty premises of what success would look like and how success would be achieved, and really shady as to the measures by which we were going to try to achieve said success in this multi-level marketing scheme. So as I was reminiscing about this, I'm thinking, you know, during this time, we listened to audio tapes and we read a crap ton of books. There was a book list that was pretty much prescribed to every person in the business. And you'd go to your upline would tell you what books to read at what time of your business growth. And so this was a book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. This was a book that I was recommended by my upline because, you know, I just had really negative self-talk and I needed to, you know, speak more positively and be more affirmative in my speech toward myself and toward my business. And so in revisiting some of these old success books, I'm trying to think, you know, is there any merit to what I was reading? Even though it didn't work in that vehicle, in that, you know, multi-level marketing company, what if I were to start reading these books and consuming this material, but with a different lens? And so, you know, I've been really down on myself lately, really overwhelmed. I'm planning a wedding that is going to happen in like 3 weeks, and just feeling a little bit disorganized, feeling a little bit like stressed, and my body is like, just like not necessarily cooperating all the time with, you know, trying to lose weight and trying to feel good. And I've just been stressed. And so I'm thinking, you know, I've just been in this negative headspace. Let me listen to the Audible version of this book. The Audible version of the book includes an interview or like interview clips after almost every chapter of an interview with the author himself. Dr. Shad Helmstetter is a doctor of motivational psychology. Never heard of that degree before, but he got a PhD in it, so I guess we call him doctor. Apparently he has no affiliation or no monetary affiliation with Amway, but I learned after listening to this book, because I Googled it, I'm like, who is this guy really? Like, when did he get his education? And there's like this Amway wiki page that showed like he wrote several articles like advocating for, and I'm forgetting the word, but basically like he was an advocate for Amway. He was like a co-signer of the Amway principles, and you know, the guy has a ton of books, like I think up to like 23 or something books on self-talk. He would speak at conferences. Sound familiar? And he now has this like paid app where it's like Self-Talk Plus, and there's a 30-day free trial, and I signed up for that and it was creepy as hell and I deleted it after like 2 days. But it's a self-talk app that there's a 30-day free trial, and then it's $20 a month, and you listen to these like affirmation tapes, and it is just as like 80s cringy. I don't even know. I don't know what era self-talk was really big, but I mean, he started authoring. He calls himself, or they call him, the father of self-talk. So that was big in the late 70s, early 80s. But it is just as cringy as those affirmational tapes where it's like, you are an amazing person. You are succeeding in every way. And it was like, it's repeating the same phrase 3 times. And I played one for my fiance and he's like, please turn it off, please. It's so bad. So anyway, he's just shilling his wares basically. And, of course, Amway is a mega, audience, a mega market for him to just be able to tap into the, you know, delusional ambitions of multi-level marketing distributors. And so even though he's not financially affiliated, I mean, the guy is in their pockets for sure. So anyway, let's just go through kind of like my notes of this book. Basically, I did end up getting some positive things out of it, and I do want to talk about that at the end. But let's just start with the tea and the bullshit, because there's a lot. First of all, the very premise of this book is based on a statistic that has no citations. I don't know where this study came from. I tried Googling this number, and the only article that I found was an article that cited this guy. So this statistic started smelling like shit, like from the beginning, because I'm pretty sure he pulled it out of his ass. He basically builds this whole theory of the reason why people are geared toward failure is because from age 0 to 18 years old, on average, if you grew up in a relatively positive household, on average, you are told no or what you can't do 148,000 times before you reach 18 years old. I have no idea who this study measured, how many people were surveyed, how they measured how many times somebody was told no. And the way that this book just kind of generalized, and you know, maybe a few thousand times they were told yes, or what they could do. It's like, how are we measuring this ratio of no's to yeses in your childhood? How are you measuring the quality of the no that someone is told? Because I'm sorry, if a 2-year-old is being told, no, don't touch that, that's going to hurt you, congratulations, you were parented. That's not negative. That's not crushing your dreams. That's not building a negative self-esteem. Being told no is healthy and a very positive boundary in your life. And I think people should tell people no more often, because oftentimes we say yes to things that we don't actually want to say yes to, but we say yes to because we feel pressured to. So what is this hatred of the word no? I'm not getting it. I'm not standing it. So there's that. Also, you know, he follows it up with some anecdotal stories of how, you know, I was told that I would never have any musical talent and I just didn't have any musical ability whatsoever. Okay, I get it. You know, sometimes the truth is hard to hear, and sometimes people are wrong and have wrong evaluations of people's capacities, but that in no way means that 148,000 times between the time that you were born and you turned 18 years old, people were constantly telling you what you couldn't do in a relatively positive household. Like, I think we just need to be a little bit more reasonable about the difference between parenting and normalcy versus bullying, or even downright just like verbal abuse. I mean, if you grew up with parents who told you every single day that you ain't shit and that you're a worthless piece of shit, like, yeah, of course, that's verbal abuse. That's terrible. Nobody should grow up having those words constantly playing in their minds. But I promise you that that is not the majority of people. Okay, the majority of people actually needed to be told no more frequently. And a lot of the, you know, Karens and Chads that we see in the world, they haven't been told no enough. So anyway, that's my little rant about that stupid statistic. And then he goes on to expound on the fact that, you know, 95% of the choices we make are directed by subconscious beliefs. I don't know how that's measured. This book contained absolutely no citations whatsoever. So there's that. And then he said up to 77% of our subconscious beliefs that dictate our actions are negative and geared toward like stopping you from success. Or he said 77% are false or working against you. How do we know this? How do we measure this? Are you even a doctor? What are your credentials? Because I am smelling first-degree quackery. Anyway, so false premise from the start. And then he goes on, basically throughout this book, he tries to dispel this idea that this is not hypnosis. This is not supposed to be subliminal messaging. This isn't supposed to be something that you're not even detecting. This is supposed to be a conscious change to how you're speaking to yourself. But then throughout the entire book, he's talking about how the most effective way to rewire your neural pathways and, you know, the most effective ways to take advantage of your neuroplasticity is to listen to something in the background, to listen to positive affirmations in the background. So it's not actually, you know, speaking affirmations, it's listening to affirmations. And where do you listen to those affirmations? On his $20 a month app. Are we picking up what I'm putting down here? This is not that hard to get, but you know, I bought it at some point. So anyway, trying to dispel that this is not hypnosis, but then goes on to say that you basically should listen to it in the background. And all of his anecdotal stories are about how, you know, one person was listening to it every morning, but the other person in the household was just listening to it in the background. They weren't even trying to listen to it. And they had all of these positive changes because they were listening to somebody else listen to affirmations. Okay, so you're telling me it's subliminal and it's subconscious. Also, you're telling me that 95% of the subconscious thoughts that we have are the ones that are making our decisions in life, and only 5% of the decisions that we make in our lives are conscious. So are we working on the subconscious or are we working on the conscious? Make up your mind, Shad. So anyway, then also maybe I should mention, if you're new, I have a master's degree in mental health counseling, clinical mental health counseling. I am not licensed and I do not work in the mental health field. So take that as you will, but I know a little bit about mental health counseling because I did complete the degree in it. So when then he goes on in an interview after the chapter. So this isn't actually in the book. This is in an interview in the Audible version. And the interviewer asks him, you know, what is the difference between self-talk and changing your self-talk and therapy? He doesn't really talk about therapy at all. He basically just goes on to shill his products and say the benefits of you know, self-talk, which again, if you're going to talk from a clinical level, if you're going to say that you're a doctor in something and it's not something that you're licensed in, you just have a doctorate in motivational psychology, so you're not licensed to practice anything, but you're going to go on and basically provide the benefits over therapy, the benefits of your little $20 a month app. Quackery. Like, this guy is a total quack. Hello? I mean, he may have good ideas, kind of, but geez Louise. Also, the thing that really got to me, and this pissed me off, was basically, okay, I'm going to read specifically because I wrote down the quote. he said, most of your disbelief are your old programs talking to you. Also, he uses a word like programming. So you have to reprogram yourself. I mean, do you smell a cult? Because I do. And then he even goes on to say, you have to be willing to suspend your disbelief. Okay. Okay. So from an optimistic standpoint, sometimes the pessimism in me might seem a little bit too much of a Debbie Downer, and maybe I have to be a little bit more open-minded, and I have to be a little bit more, you know, just happy-go-lucky, and you know, put faith out in the universe and manifest your dreams. And maybe I need to be a little bit more whimsical in my life. However, in my experience in Amway, where we had to, you know, listen to audio tapes and go to sleep with the audio tapes playing, so it is subliminal, or it is subconscious, telling me to suspend my disbelief, suspend what I'm thinking, suspend rationale. You are telling me to ignore my intuition. And I listened to that once, and I wasted 2.5 years and $18,000 doing that. So forgive me if I don't want to buy your $20 app or listen to your shitty books, because you're telling me that when I have this nagging feeling in the back of my head that this might be quackery, or that this might be silly, or that this might be bullshit, you asking me to just suspend that for a moment, not gonna happen. Not gonna happen anymore, because you're asking people to ignore their intuition. And I think that's really shady. Sorry. He then goes on to say, when you hear the old programs start to argue with you in your mind, that's a sign that the self-talk is working. I've heard that before, definitely. Because, of course, when you start to doubt, when you start to like get this nagging feeling in the back of your head that you're like, this seems weird. This is not okay. This is kind of like shady. Or this is also just like a little bit too loosey-goosey, woo-woo, new agey, which I'm not even against new age kind of stuff. I'm like, I'm for it, you know? Manifest. Put out positive energy in the world. But also, I don't know, just this whole like, oh, if you think that this is weird, it's because it's working. No, it's because your mind and your everything that you know to be true is trying to tell you that you are falling deep into something that is not constructive. And anybody who's telling you to ignore your intuition probably does not have your best interest at heart. I'm sorry to say. I'm sorry to say, but that is the truth. But let's actually dip back into kind of the difference between therapy and self-talk. Because first of all, like some of the things that he said kind of related to therapeutic aspects. Like his whole concept of the reason why we have such negative self-talk is because of things that we're told in our childhood kind of is a little bit reminiscent of psychodynamic therapy, where it's like you have an approach where basically all of your problems or a lot of your problems are rooted in like childhood stuff. Whereas like there are other therapists who really, you know, they want to acknowledge the childhood, validate the childhood, but also just kind of live in the now and work on the now. And I'm a little bit more of the now type person. Because it's important to understand the root of things. And I do, you know, if you need to explore your childhood, explore your childhood. But I always preferred doing like more shorter term goal oriented therapy, which typically just doesn't allow for too much time to like go really deep into childhood stuff. Anyway, all of that to say that there is a little bit of basis with, you know, his theory on like childhood stuff, things that you've been told in your childhood kind of create the way that you see the world and your worldview. That makes sense. The other thing that kind of like self-talk does, but in a shortcut and like the way that he does it in a really like cheap kind of way, is basically it's like cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're challenging cognitive distortions, the things that in your mind you say to yourself, and you may not even know that you're saying that to yourself, but it's forming your beliefs and your thoughts, and those thoughts turn into, you know, action. Basically, your thoughts create your beliefs, and your beliefs like create your actions create patterns, and your patterns create your life. So oftentimes like cognitive behavioral therapy will ask someone to challenge those cognitive distortions, but that requires a little bit more curiosity, a little bit more work, a little bit more presence of mind, to be able to identify what it is that you've been thinking about a particular thing. So like taking weight loss, for example, identify what it is that you believe about yourself and weight loss. Even further back, what do you believe about weight? What do you believe about health? What does your view of the world look like in that lens? And then what do you believe about yourself, your capabilities of weight loss? What will that do for you? And just kind of like the underlying motives, rationale, and beliefs that you have about weight loss and what that means to you. And then from there, being able to actively choose what it is that you really believe, what it is that you really want to start implementing and reframing those beliefs into a more constructive way, so that you can have more constructive patterns and actions. So all of that to say that the idea of reframing something is a positive thing, and self-talk is kind of a shortcut to doing that, instead of, you know, really doing the deep questioning as to why and like the deep analysis. You're basically just like shortcutting it, and you're saying, well, this is what I want to create in my life. These are the actions and patterns that I want to have. So this is what I'm going to start telling myself, so that it can influence my thoughts to, you know, start creating those patterns in my life. Makes sense. Totally makes sense. But like I said, the fact that he kind of ignored the therapy question and just skipped right to, you should buy my books and listen to my audio tapes, because, you know, that's all you need. It's like, not really. And just telling someone, yeah, well, the reason why you think that way is because you've been told no. Way oversimplified. It's the lack of nuance for me that really gets me into a mode of like disbelief, skepticism, dare I say like negativity, really. And I honestly did not go into this book trying to, you know, trying to nitpick it or trying to argue. I honestly was like, you know, maybe this guy has something helpful to say, and maybe I was just too, you know, delusional to hear it the first time. No, this book fueled the delusion, and that was part of the problem. So now, what do I actually take from this book? What is the positive? Did I just waste my time? I have kind of taken some time to think about what it is that I want to create in my life. What are some patterns that I want to implement? I think that challenging my cognitive distortions and reframing those thoughts is a really constructive way of talking to myself. In addition to just having more self-compassion, because I'm just really hard on myself sometimes. And I think we all can be pretty hard on ourselves. You know, we see what our intentions are, what our goals are, and we also, you know, are constantly trying to get better. And by trying to get better, you kind of have to identify problems that you want to solve. Oh, that's another thing that he said that I was like, that's weird, was like, basically, every time that you learned, or every time that you failed at something, or every time that you heard the word no, or that you couldn't do something, was something that you learned was a way to fail, or was a way not to do things, or was a way that you couldn't succeed. And honestly, I feel like that was trying to be counterintuitive to like the basic nature of human survival, in terms of trying to do something and finding out that it doesn't work that way, and then finding a different way to do that thing. I think that that just was like overgeneralized as being a negative thing, that like, you learned that you couldn't do that, and that's a bad thing. It's like, no, you learned a way that didn't work to do that. But that doesn't mean that your curiosity and tenacity and perseverance completely just like crapped out after that, and there was no way of finding other alternatives. So it's kind of like that phrase of like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. His is like insanity plus, because it's like doing the same thing over and over and over again, but speaking positively and manifesting different results. Okay, bro, you do you. But anyway, so I think it's just like a natural part of human evolution and survival instincts to try something. If it doesn't work, try it a different way. Hello? Anyway, and then the last thing that he did say that I was like, oh, no, that actually makes sense, was to surround yourself with constructive people, basically. Because if you kind of notice the self-talk of other people around you, sorry, I have like hair like everywhere. If you notice the self-talk of people around you, that kind of influences your own dialogue. And that is true, because, you know, I've been around people that I kind of like grew up with, and then taken a long time away, and then come back and heard the same kind of stuff that they were saying. And I realized that those are things that were things that I said. It mainly was to do with like weight loss. Was I'd hear that person's like same internal dialogue spoken out loud, and I realized that like even as a kid I remember them talking like that, and it did affect the way that I viewed myself, and the way that I viewed weight and food and all of those things. So I can see how, you know, the people that you surround yourself with, hopefully they're positive and constructive people, and they're not talking shit about themselves, simply because that does have a way of impacting, especially if you spend a lot of time with that person, it has a way of impacting the way that you see the world as well, because you do become more like the people that you spend the most time with. So that makes sense. Not in a weird way where you're correcting other people's internal dialogues, but just encouraging self-compassion and compassion for others is always a good thing. And being aware of the influences that you surround yourself with is also a plus. So kudos to you, Shad. You made one good point. He did make some good points, and I ended up doing the little exercise that he did at the end. The last like 2 chapters were what I found to be constructive. Basically, he said like just that one thing about surround yourself with people who speak positively. And then he did say to write down your top 10 self-talk phrases that you wish to change, and then write down what you want to change them to. So that was all the tea and the bullshit. And now I guess, you know, if you want to hear about my personal shit and things that I'm rephrasing and reframing in my life, this is this part of the video. I wrote down the top 10 things that I've been saying to myself that really have not been making me feel good. And the way that I want to reframe it, not in a way that I'm manifesting something different, but in a way that I just want to think about it a different way. And I want to be be true in the way that I'm speaking, not just positively to myself, but truthfully to myself. So the first thing that I said was that I want to change the way that I say, I don't have time to do what I want to do. And instead I would like to say that I use my time wisely and prioritize what's most important. Because I do, and I want to continue doing that. But not having time to do what I want to do, I do when I prioritize what's most important to me. Number 2, I want to change the way that I say that I'm not good enough or experienced enough to own my own business. And that's a whole thing in and of itself, business ownership and entrepreneurship, because it's something that I'm mulling in the back of my head. Because I've always been entrepreneurial, and Amway was just a really bad kickoff to the entrepreneurial spirit. But what I want to start saying instead was that I dive in with both feet and gain wisdom and experience along the way. I am smart and capable of anything I put my mind to. Because facts. The third thing that I want to rephrase is that I frequently think that people don't want what I have to offer, just in a general sense. That I have like a general idea that like people are not really interested in what I've got going on. But I want to start saying that I am careful and attentive to the choices I make, and I attract people who share my mission and values. And that might not be everyone, but I do attract people who share that with me, and I am not the only one. I'm not the only one. The fourth thing that I want to rephrase is that I have poor taste in fashion, food, music, etc. I don't know what it is, but for some reason, I think I'm some special little snowflake that, you know, I'm the only person in the world who likes XYZ 1, 2, 3. And I'm just not cool enough to, you know, like what everybody else likes, which is, number 1, not true. Your girl is basic as hell. But number 2, there would not be a supply if there was not an adequate demand, which means that the things that I consume are things that other people are consuming as well. So me just having poor taste. Anyway, the way that I want to rephrase it though, is that I like what I like. My preferences are just as valid as those of others. I am not the only person who eats pork rinds and listens to unpredictable music genres, because it's true. I have like, I don't know, the opening song of Lilo and Stitch, and then a reggaeton song, and then a song by the Doobie Brothers, like, and that's all like the first 3 songs on my liked songs in Spotify. But it's just random. It's not that I have just such unique eclectic taste. It's like, I don't know, it's just mixed in there, so it's really unpredictable. Also, pork rinds are bomb, so I don't know why I feel insecure about my my enjoyment of them. Anyway, okay. Number 5 is I have been telling myself that I can't seem to lose weight anymore. Nay, ma'am. No. I am saying that I am learning every day about what feels best for my body's optimal function. I am strong and nourish my body with foods that make me thrive, which is true. I have been improving my health. So yeah. Number 6. This one is vulnerable, super vulnerable. Number 6 is that I'm scared for my fertility, and I am very limited in the time I have to have children. This has to do with all of my health issues, diagnoses, and, you know, the surgery that I had in 2020 to remove some cysts on my ovaries, all of that. So what I would like to say to myself is that my body is resilient and is efficient in healing itself. And our family will happen when and how it should, and I am releasing factors that are not in my control. One way or another, I will have a family. Not everybody, you know, has really an easy time with fertility, and I am not ignorant to think that, you know, I won't be one of those people. However, I can speak with a little bit more faith and a little bit more releasing the anxiety about things that I can't control, and just know that, you know, one way or another, I'm going to have a family, and that family is going to be exactly what I need and what is right. You know what I mean? It'll happen, and it'll happen the way it needs to happen. Okay, number 7. I don't know why I say this to myself, but I do. I say that I don't have many friends. Whatever, Sarah. I do have friends. Anyway, so what I'd like to say is that I attract and invest time in friends that enrich my life and are in it with me for the long haul. Because I am the type of person who has deep and long-lasting friendships. So there's kind of a revolving door of people who are more like friendships of convenience, but there is not a revolving door of people who are really like friends, not just for a season. You know what I mean? And I'm very blessed to have the friends that I have. So, but I don't know. My little internal dialogue is sometimes like, but you're not the type to have friends. Yes, you are. Stop it. Shut up. Anyway, okay. Number 8. I attract drama and am constantly discontented. I think it's just been this past year that's been really dramatic. But anyway, what I'd like to start saying is that I have a low tolerance for bullshit, but I am tactful, loyal, and kind. I reciprocate energy and effort. Also, I do not settle for less than what I'm capable of achieving, and I work hard toward my goals. So the discontentment is something that it's like, yeah, girl, because you're not where you want to be. You're still, you know, aiming toward your goals. But that whole attracting drama thing is like, I do have a low tolerance for bullshit. I wish I had a higher tolerance for bullshit, but I don't. Number 9 is a weird one also, that sometimes I tell myself that basically I'm like a bad or a clumsy homemaker and cook, because it doesn't look like I live in a magazine. But what I'd like to say is that I keep a clean home and I throw down in the kitchen. And life's priorities ebb and flow, and sometimes fun comes with a little mess. So, like right now, wedding planning. I mean, I don't even want to show you all of this because my tripod right now is in a very precarious state, but my home is very disorganized. But that is just not the priority right now. And sometimes you just gotta be okay with a little mess when you're doing, you know, things of higher importance. Last thing is that my health challenges are unending. Sometimes it feels really frustrating and like exhausting. But what I am telling myself instead is that I love my body and I am grateful for the unique opportunities I have to take care of it. Because I think it's an ever extending process. But I think everybody is on that journey because everyone has a human body and we're all just trying to take care of ourselves the best that we can. And, you know, one year you might be struggling with one thing and the next year you're doing something else. Or, you know, in your childhood, you may not have been allergic to something, but then you develop adult allergies and then you're kind of like adapting to that. So everybody's adapting, everybody's growing. So shut up, Sarah, you're okay. This is my self-compassion, is to tell myself to shut up, you're fine, it's okay. Calm down, it's not that big of a deal. But anyway, that's just kind of like, that's the vibe right now, is that trying to be compassionate toward myself and reframe some of the stuff that's really just been ruminating in my mind, and being more positive, but not in a way that feels very like just following the crowd or being like a sheep, just like listening to programming and reprogramming my brain. Like, I don't know. I can't get on that level right now. Let me know if you have had any success in reframing those thoughts or beliefs, or, you know, what your experience has been on this, because I'd love to know. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for the, you know, bearing with me for the rambling, and I will see you next time on my next upload. Consider subscribing for more of all this. Okay, bye.